Sit by your lovely daughter there and tell us, did she show a talent for singing as a little girl?
Oh, yes. Her father was quite musically inclined, and he played several instruments and also sang. And when Toni was 3 years old, practically before she could talk, she sang then a very popular song, It's a Sin to Tell a Lie.
Yeah. And at school, Miss Scott?
Oh, and at school, Toni's dad and I separated when Toni was less than a year old. And as time went on, I got a job, and I put Toni in an academy. It was a ranch-type school, and the sisters used to let Toni sing in the choir on Sunday. And, of course, that was when Toni, even then, decided that singing would be her career.
Then come your high school days at Holy Cross in Santa Cruz, California. Active, almost tomboyish years, but ever highlighted by the development of your singing talent. Who among those in that audience, for example, will ever forget you standing on that high school stage one afternoon, angelic and with tears in your eyes, singing Ave Maria, bringing tears to many watching and hearing this girl of 15?
I wish I could have been there that day, Toni, to hear you.
Yes, it's your father, main event fighter for many years, Pete George, now assistant director of the Balmoral Health Club in Miami Beach, Florida. Here's Dad. Now, I tell you, Toni, you sit over there by Mom, and Dad, you sit on this side over there. And...
I don't know who's the bigger baby, him or me.
It's been, how long's it been since you've seen your daughter?
It was in
Mr. George?
1949, Ralph. Toni was just 16 at the time.
I was 16.
I mean, yes, you were.
Yeah.
Yes. And her mother was ill, and so I decided to take Toni for several months down to Miami with me.
Sure.
And while we were there, I was training a few fighters. And Toni used to go to the gymnasium with me. And
He used to get me out of school.
I had to keep her out of school, take her to the gym with me. And it was there that I taught her how to box and how to defend herself.
Yes.
And so one day somebody talked her into joining to compete in a bathing beauty contest. No, she didn't want to. Yeah, I still got that picture, that is. So...
I think she should have won, Mr. George.
No, the fellow, one of the judges says that girl belongs in the Miss Tarzan contest.
Toni not only inherited her musical talent from you, you taught her coordination, how to exercise properly, and this was to stand her in good stead on the trying road ahead. Now, we'll pick up the steps that led you to the present in just a moment, but first, a word from Bob Warren.
Thank you, Ralph. Ever wish you'd grow up to be smarter than your teacher? Watch Grace Dawson prove you can, as teacher gets taught.
Slowly, Stephen. Your son is one of my best pupils.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be all, Stephen. You should play the piano, Mrs. Dawson. Such artistic hands.
Oh, thank you, Miss Potter, but my artistic hands are too busy doing dishes.
Well, I only do dishes for myself, but my hands are as tight, and it's very embarrassing in my work.
Say, I've an idea. Ever use Joy for your dishes?
No.
Well, how would you like to do dishes in something mild as a bubble bath?
Oh, I love it.
Well, that's how mild Joy is. You can see that mildness on your hands.
Well, maybe I better get some Joy.
Be sure to look for this pretty new plastic bottle.
Oh, I will. If anybody needs artistic-looking hands like yours, I do.
Joy has a mildness you can see on your hands.
Here in 1949, Toni Lee Scott, your 3-month stay with your dad at an end, you return to Holy Cross School in Santa Cruz, California. But you're restless, uncertain. What do you want your mother to let you do?
I want her to let me quit school and go to business school.
Yeah, you kind of wanted to go to San Francisco to sing. And, of course, your mother wisely decides that if you are to go to San Francisco, it will be to attend business school. But what did you do instead of attending strictly to your studies, Toni?
Well, I went down and used to hang around this theatrical agency, hoping that somebody would be interested enough to audition me or find out from the musicians at the Musicians Union where somebody was looking for a girl singer.
And you make some little progress, even singing a couple of numbers with Stan Kenton. And this makes you more determined than ever that you can be a singer. This takes you to Los Angeles and your nighttime job as a car hop. During the day, you'd be out trying to get a job as a singer, and then September 8th, 1952, and the accident on your motorcycle ride. You were married just before that accident, weren't you, Tony?
August 22nd.
10 days before. A marriage that dissolves quickly in the heat of the ordeal you now face. 6 months in Santa Monica Hospital, where you undergo 24 separate operations as the doctors try desperately by bone grafts to save your crushed left leg.
My mother's room was right next to yours in the hospital. Remember, Tony?
Yes, Tony, a very good friend of yours, known to millions of television viewers as the U.S. Marshal, star of the series of that name, Mr. John Bromfield. John, you didn't know Tony before the accident, did you?
No, I didn't, Ralph, but I used to visit my mother every day in Santa Monica Hospital, and I'd always pass Tony's room as being next door, and she'd sort of smile at me, and I'd nod at her. And finally, I went in, I sat down, and I started chatting with Tony, and when I found out the predicament she was in, I was even more impressed with her cheerfulness. She gave all of the patients on that floor a great lift. And in fact, even at Christmas time, she sang carols for them. I remember one time, Tony made a remark to me. She says, you know, Johnny, she says, that guy upstairs must have decided all this. He must have had a reason for it. She said, because of it, I'm going to be a better person.
When it was decided that Tony's leg could not be saved, what did she say to you, Mrs. Scott?
Well, she came home from the doctor, and all she said to me was, Mother, if you can take it, I can.
Just before the operation?
Just before the operation, I was knitting her a sweater, and she said, you just knit on my sweater and don't cry.
When you leave the hospital, you insist on driving your mother home to the cottage at nearby Malibu Beach.
Yes.
And I was waiting there for it, too. What do you think she did? The first thing she did, she got into her bathing suit, and I'll never forget her mother says, Tony, what in the world are you doing? She says, Mom, it's either now or never. She says, I'm going to go down and lie on that beach in the sun. I think it was kind of a way of Tony facing the world, don't you think, huh?
Well, I always said.
No?
I always
Anyway,
had
we
loved
went
ones.
down and we sat in the beach, didn't we, Tony?
You
In
got
the
me a
sun?
fish.
That's right, honey.
Thank you very much. John Bromfield.
All right.
During the months in the hospital, your medical bills have piled up, Tony, wiping out whatever savings you and your mother had. And even with the accident policy your dad turned over to you, you're left with over $30,000 in debts. You sue the driver of the car that hit you for damages, but the jury returns a verdict of unavoidable accident. As you leave the courthouse with 25 cents, the total money to your name, you pass a Salvation Army mission where men are waiting to be fed. And what did Tony say to you, Mrs. Scott?
She said, gee, Mom, I know where we can have breakfast and no tip.
On May 11th, 1954, you undergo a second amputation for which the surgeon submits no bill. Faced by your staggering indebtedness, that summer you sing on the daytime Chef Milani show here in Los Angeles, propped up against the piano, your crutches out of sight. And in the evenings, you work as a switchboard operator at radio station KFI, also in Los Angeles. That fall, you get a job as a receptionist in a lawyer's office and make occasional appearances on the Larry Finlay television show. But your financial obligations seem just too great. So in February 1955, you go into voluntary bankruptcy.
It was on the Larry Finlay show that I first saw you, Tony.
A man who played an all-important part in your return to a normal life, Tony. Here's your great friend,